Thank you, Hannah. What's good? Happy Sunday, Mission City. Hope you're well. My name is Sean, and it is, for some reason, the mystery of my life that they let me be on the team here. But I love this place. I love serving. I'd love the opportunity to meet you sometime if I haven't got to. Come say hey. Maybe wait till next week, because I'm fighting some pretty gnarly, head. It might get this summer cold yet. It's disgusting, right? And I'm sorry. So forgive me if you can move, Danny, if you want to be further away. Hey, so a couple of things. Number one, next week we will not be here. We will be downtown, Lower State Street, at the Hotel California, celebrating Easter Sunday. Somebody get excited about that. I can't wait. I'm going to invite you to, come early. Show up at 9 if you want to. We have a ton of pastries and coffee for you to enjoy. It's just a great atmosphere down there. Come early, meet someone. And then also, before you leave today, we're going to put an invite card in your hand. And so people have asked, why are you doing this? Why are we relocating for Easter Sunday? And the truth is that we've had generous churches come to us and say, hey, how can we help make a big splash on a day where someone might give church a chance? And so we've said, for some reason, we didn't say this, but for some reason, people will give church a chance on Easter. And so an easy, hopefully no blink yes would be, will you come with me to the Hotel California for Easter Sunday? It's beautiful. You don't even have to believe in Jesus. Just come, check out the views. And there's Rusty's across the street. But what we want to do is make an easy invite for you to invite your friends. And so before you leave, we're going to put an invite card or 2 or 3 in your hands so that you can help us just spread the word. And we want people to come and know and hear about the love of Jesus. And so that's why we do things like this. Anyway, super excited for next week, Easter Sunday. Hey, before we get started today, I think we have all the kids. I just want to give a quick disclaimer. This morning's heavy. For whatever reason, it's the Bible, okay? So it's all true and it's real, but it's a little heavy. And so just a disclaimer, kids are talking about selflessness. And so it's also a cool place if we have any kids. I can't see. All right, all the kids are out. We're good. All right. I can either see this or I can see you, so I get to choose which one. All right, so this morning we're continuing in our series called What's in a Name. And we started this series last week, and we said it's true, the fact that names do matter. And even the names that we give ourselves mean something. We've gotten these names for a reason. They come from a place, and they usually say something significant. If you were to call and ask me about one of my best friends, and you said, hey, have you heard from Josh? I would be like, I don't know who you're talking about. But if you called and said, have you heard from Big Dirty? I would say, yeah, man, Big Dirty's doing well. I talk to him every week. One of my best friends is known as Big Dirty. Big Dirty's 6'6", 380 pounds. He played offensive line in college football. He's a monster of a dude, and he's always just been known as Big Dirty. And so he's actually a pastor, and I'm trying to get him to come out and teach. He lives in Arizona. He may come out and teach sometime. Y'all might get to meet the Big Dirty. But what I thought would be a fun way to start this morning is we're going to play this also known as game. And so I'm going to give you the also known as, and I want to see if you can tell me who we're talking about. All right? Let's try this together. Number 1, anyone know who Old Blue Eyes is? Frank Sinatra, very good. Hey, you guys are doing great. Very good. Number 2, who's the Queen of Soul? That's right. Shame on you for not knowing that. Number 3, who's the Great One? Wayne Gretzky, Austin, sports, that boy.
He used to live here.
Oh, nice. The King of Pop. Come on, man. Michael Jackson. Good. Jackie O. Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy, that's right. For you under 30, here's one for you. The Rock. Dwayne Johnson. So I was like, finally, I can answer. And last but not least, the Wizard of Oz. Thank you. Thank you. God created the perfect shortstop for my childhood. And he gave us Osborne Earl Smith as a gift. You should know him. Anyway, Ozzie Smith. So what is in a name? Somehow these people have earned these names. You know, The Rock. I mean, the dude is ripped. He's in shape. That mug is hard. So they call him The Rock. And we learned last week, if I had a nickname, it would be The Biscuit. That would be kind of what I have earned in this whole deal. But these people have earned, and these names matter. And so in the book of John, chapter 10, Jesus refers to himself as the Good Shepherd. And in fact, I want us to read this passage together. And it comes from John chapter 10. And if you have a Bible or a Bible app, I'm going to invite you to go there, read with us. If you don't have a Bible and you want a Bible, please stop by the tent. We have some to give away. They're yours for free. But Anna Rose is going to be nice enough to write these on the screen for us. And John chapter 10, it says this. So explained it to them. I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. And all who came before me were thieves and robbers, but the true sheep did not listen to them. Yes, I am the gate. And those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy, but my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. We're going to skip down to verse 17 where it says, the Father loves me because I sacrifice my life, so I may take it back again, and no one can take my life from me. I sacrifice it voluntarily, for I have the authority to lay it down when I want to, and also to take it up again, for this is what my Father has commanded. And when he said those things, the people again were divided in their opinions about him, and some said, he is demon-possessed and out of his mind. Last week, Jesus referred to himself as the bread of life. And we learned that meant that Jesus was able to satisfy and sustain us. And this week, Jesus calls himself the Good Shepherd. You see, historically, at that time, shepherds were directly responsible for a particular herd of sheep. And sheep are a dumb animal. But they're livestock, and they're important to people's lives. And so the responsibility of the shepherd would have been to feed the sheep, to make sure the sheep could graze, that they could go out and come in and be protected and be safe, and to make sure none wandered off. And if there was any danger, the shepherd would protect those sheep. The most important job the shepherd had was to make sure those sheep returned home safely. And so when Jesus says, I am that shepherd, he does not say, I am a good shepherd. Jesus makes this definitive declaration when he says, I am the good shepherd. And he says in verse 17, he says, the Father loves me because I sacrifice my life. And so this morning, much like we did last week, here's what I want to do. I want to walk through two stories, one in the Old Testament and one in the New Testament, that kind of center around this idea of sacrifice. And the first story is found in Genesis chapter 22. And I want to give you a quick context for this story. This story is about a man named Abraham. And God came to this man named Abraham and he said, hey, I want to make a covenant with you. I want to make a holy deal with you, that I'm going to make a nation through you. You're going to be the father of millions. You're going to birth kings and leaders and great warriors and world changers. They're all coming through you, and I'll be their God, and you'll be my people. God makes this deal with Abraham, and Abraham goes, awesome, one thing, I'm 99. Things aren't quite working the way they used to, God. And God says, all right, trust me. And God is faithful, and he delivers to Abraham his first son named Isaac. And Isaac literally translates as laughter. When Abraham had his baby, he laughed because he was 99 years old. He's like, I don't know what you're doing, God, but here we go. And he has a son that he's going to begin to make a great nation through. So that's the context for what we're about to read. Okay, God makes a covenant with Abraham, have a son who's going to birth millions. All right, so here we go. Genesis 22, verse 1. It says this. It says, sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will show you. And the next morning, Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey, and he took 2 of his servants along with his son Isaac, and then he chopped wood for a fire for a burnt offering. And he set out for the place that God had told him about. Here's what I need us to understand this morning. Here's what I want you to know, is that we, as a people, we have always had a problem with guilt. Okay, sometimes even guilt and shame. We somehow recognize that the way we're living is not what we could be doing or should be doing. And this was true from the beginning of time till now. Thousands and thousands of years ago, we've always felt this way. And at this particular time in history, these people were agrarian in that they were dependent on the earth, on the land to live. And so these people are dependent upon the sun and the rain to grow food and to feed livestock. And so whoever or whatever is in charge of that, I need to make sure I'm in good standing with, because I absolutely need rain and I need sunshine. And if these crops don't grow, I don't eat. And if this livestock doesn't grow, I don't eat. And so I have this problem with, I need to be in a right standing with whoever's in charge. And so a sacrifice became this like penance to keep people in right standing with God. And so what I want you to notice about this story, this particular story about Abraham, is God comes to him and says, hey, I want you to sacrifice your son. Your only son. Your son, who's supposed to be the beginning of this covenant that God said he made with him. I want you to take him on a hill and offer him as a sacrifice. I want you to kill your son. That's what God asks of Abraham. And look what Abraham says in verse 17. Or look what this is. Abraham the next morning got up and he saddled his donkey. You know what you don't see in this verse? You don't see Abraham going, hey, wait a minute, God. What did you just say? What did you ask of me? What? Why? Why in the world would you ask me to do this? You promised. You told me we were going to birth a nation out of this kid. And now you want what from me? What parent in their right mind doesn't stand up for their kid and say, God, what are you doing? You see, we have always had a problem with our sin, so much so that the people of Abraham's day would have started trying to deal with their sin by growing crops and offering crops. They would have burned their grain and said, God, maybe this can get me in right standing with you. But the problem is, the sin kept coming back. And they kept making mistakes. And apparently burning the grain wasn't good enough. So they moved on to their livestock, and they started sacrificing their livestock because they're dealing with this whole brokenness inside of them that is not working. So they start sacrificing animals, going, God, maybe this is it. Maybe this will do it. And when that doesn't work, the unthinkable starts to happen. And the wickedness of their own heart leads them to offer their children as sacrifices to God to deal with their own sin and guilt. They don't know how to live. And so when Abraham says, okay, what he is saying is, I've seen this done. This is what's happening around me. And apparently this sadistic deity is asking me to do the same thing that I've watched my wicked neighbors do over and over again. And so I guess this is how this goes. I want to show you how the story finishes. It says, when they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar, and he arranged the wood on it. And then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up a knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Abraham replied, here I am. He said, don't lay a hand on the boy. The angel said, do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God, and you have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. And then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. And so he took the ram and he sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham named the place Jehovah-Jireh, which means the Lord will provide. And to this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. And so God allows Abraham to get to that moment where he sees it, he feels it, he's holding the knife and he's looking at his kid. And God says, don't you dare. Don't lay a hand on that boy. And what he's doing is he's telling Abraham, I am not what you think I am. I'm not what these people say I am. I'm different. In fact, I'm not going to ask you for this. I'm going to provide the sacrifice. This story is, as much as it's about the faithfulness of Abraham, this story is about a ram. About a ram caught in a thicket that God said, I will provide for you a sacrifice. We learned the phrase last week, bread of life, Jehovah-Jireh, the God who provides. God says, stop trying to deal with your sin guilt like this. Stop it. And tell everyone around you that this is not what I'm after. I am different. This story is about the ram. All right, fast forward to the second story I want us to hear. It comes from the New Testament in Matthew chapter 26. And this story is about Jesus. And Jesus is about hours away from enduring an execution. You see, the things that he said, the claims that he made, could no longer go unchecked. The church decided that he could no longer live. The church decided they would partner with a corrupt and evil government, a bloodthirsty government known as Rome, and the church partnered with them to kill him. Because he could no longer go on saying what he was saying. And Jesus knows he's about to endure a brutal death. And so I want to pick it up hours before this happens. In Luke 22, verse 39, it says this. It says, then accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went, as usual, to the Mount of Olives. And there he told them, pray that you will not give in to temptation. And he walked away about a stone's throw, and he knelt down and he prayed, Father, if you're willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. And then an angel from heaven appeared and strengthened him. He prayed more fervently, and he was in such agony of spirit, that his sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. And at last he stood up again, returned to the disciples, only to find them asleep, exhausted from grief. And so Jesus, his disciples, and Abraham all have one thing in common. And the Bible calls it anguish. It's great sorrow. Great sorrow. The Bible says that Jesus prayed fervently. And there's a real medical condition called Hemohydrosis, that when you are under such stress, you begin to tense up so hard that you will pop blisters in your face and head and sweat blood. And this is the condition that Jesus finds himself in. Great anguish. And the disciples are asleep, not because they're lazy, but because they're so stricken with grief. They have no idea what's about to happen to them and their best friend. And what they thought was going is now completely different, and they're all probably going to lose their lives tonight. And so they can't even deal with the reality of it. And Abraham's looking at his own kid in the face, and they're all experiencing great sorrow. And the question everyone should be asking as we read this is, why? doing this? Why are the stakes this high? Why are people having to die? Why are we killing animals? Why? The question everyone should ask when you read this is, what happened? And the answer this morning I want to give you is, this is true about all of us, is that we chose death. I chose death. And the punishment for sin has been and will forever be death. Sin cannot and will not be tolerated or coexist with a holy and just God. God made a perfect world, and he made perfect people, and he put us together with him in this world, and he said, we'll be together. I'll make a covenant with you. And it was good. But because God is good, he said, I'm not going to make you a robot. I'm going to let you have a choice. You're not going to be a puppet. You're going to be free to choose. You can live with me, the source of life, or you can choose not to. And we chose death. Romans 6:23 says the wages of sin is death. And man, I know this is heavy, and I'm sorry. I have no idea where you are this morning with all of this. You may not believe any of this, and that's okay. Or maybe you've been tracking with God for a long time. Regardless, I'm glad you're here. And we can agree to disagree on a lot of things, but here's what I believe to be true. The one thing I believe I can get all of us to agree on. In fact, I believe I can get the entirety of Santa Barbara to agree on one thing. I have your attention now, don't I? It's like we don't agree on anything. But I do think the one thing I can get, your school, your restaurant, your bar, whatever, I think we can all agree on this. Something is broken. Something's off. This is not the way it's supposed to be. This universe, this societal structure, it isn't working properly. Something is off. People make choices every day to hurt one another and to hurt themselves. And so if that's true, if we can all agree that this is somewhat off, man, then there are only 3 conclusions available to us. And you'll find people living their life based on one of 3 conclusions. Number 1 is that this is just chaos. There is no God. And we're all kind of made up of matter and energy. And we're all kind of colliding into one another. And it's every man and woman for themselves. And that's why it's broken, because there's no real design behind it. And there's nothing that you and I can absolutely do about it, because there's no morality and there's no moral code. And let's just go see how much I can get and how much I can achieve, because people don't really matter. And so let's eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Maybe. Conclusion number 2 is maybe there is a deity, or maybe there's many deities, and the world was made by him or them or her, but he, she, they somehow allow us to make mistakes. And because of our mistakes, the world's a hard place to live. But someday we'll figure out, in fact, maybe we're evolved. You know, things like racism and abuse and war and violence and hate and deceit and greed. We're making our way through them, right? We've overcome that. If we're just good enough for a while, maybe whoever's out there will focus on my good. And if I can get the right moral bank account and do more good than bad, I'll take part of some kind of reward at the end. And maybe, just maybe, I can bet on myself. Maybe. I don't know. The conclusion 3 is this, and I'm wrapping up, I promise. Conclusion 3 says this: there is a God. A one true and only God, and he made a perfect world for perfect people. And he gave us a choice, and we chose to separate ourselves from him forever. And in doing so, we contaminated this perfect world in such a way that it would stay corrupt, and we were left on our own to die. And we needed rescue. We needed help out of the mess that we had made. We needed sacrifice. We needed something to make it right And if the wages of this sin equals death, then someone or something had to die. And the only way that sacrifice could mean anything to anyone is if the one being sacrificed was not guilty himself. And so God, the one who provides, that Jehovah Jireh, he loved the world so much that he gave and he provided. And just like he told Abraham, he tells us, I will provide a sacrifice. I'm not asking for your good deeds. I'm not asking for your money. And I'm certainly not asking for you for the blood of your children. In fact, I'm going to give you the blood of mine. And in doing so, I'm going to take the entirety of humanity's sin, all of its deceit, and all of it's going directly on him. My wrath is going directly on him. My hatred towards all the evil in this world will be pointed directly at my one and only Son. And he's going to trade his perfect life for yours. And when I look at him, all I'm going to see is sin. Every sin. Future sin, past sin. All of it's going to be on him. And it's going directly on his shoulders. And that's why he has to die. All of the wages of sin will die with him. And the Good Shepherd is the one who lays down his life for his sheep. Sin says, I will come to steal, kill, and destroy. And Jesus says, I'm the Good Shepherd. I've come that you may have life, and life to the full. John 3:16 from the Message says, this is how much God loved the world. That he gave his Son, his one and only Son. And this is why. So that no one need be destroyed. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and lasting life. I didn't go to all trouble of sending his Son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it was. He came to help, to put the world right again. Anyone who trusts in him is acquitted. Anyone who refuses to trust him has long since been under the death sentence without knowing him. And why? Because of that person's failure to believe in a one-of-a-kind Son of God. When introduced to him, God sent his Son Jesus to make this broken world right again. The conclusion that I have come to, that I invite you into, is to put your hope and your faith and your trust solely on Jesus, who traded his perfect life for you. This week we celebrate the cross, the sacrifice. When you look at the cross, I just want you to see the love of God on display for the world to see. God said, I'm taking all your junk, all your failures, going on here. That's how much I love you. I'm not asking for your good deeds. I'm not asking for your money. I'm not asking for anything but your heart. Trust me with your life. So this morning, if you've never made that decision to follow Jesus, I'm going to invite you to come forward. At the end of the service, there's a prayer team that would love to meet, pray with you, talk to you about what it means to follow Jesus and to trust him. That you would trade my imperfect life for his perfect life. Baxter Taylor wrote in his book about the cross. He said this. Talking about Jesus on the cross, he said, what kept him from resisting? What kept him on the cross? What kept him from resisting? It says this warrant, this tabulation of our failures. He knew the price of those sins was death. He knew the source of those sins was you. And since he couldn't bear the thought of eternity without you, he chose the nails. We chose death, so he chose the nails. We're going to take communion now this morning. We're going to celebrate and remember the sacrifice that is Jesus. You are much loved by God. I want you to hear that this morning. And the cross is evidence of his great love. Jesus has given his body and his blood for our behalf. That's what communion is. We hold these things to remind ourselves of who Jesus is and what he has done for us. And then we're going to sing a song that celebrates the beautiful name of Jesus. So for our remaining time, would you be the object of our attention? Would you be the object of our affection? If you want to know more about following him, please don't leave without talking to someone. God, you're good. We thank you for Jesus and all that he's done. We thank you that you have provided for us. We don't have to try anymore. In fact, there's not enough that we can come up with. So God, can we trade our efforts, can we trade our trying for your perfect grace and your love? Would you meet us here? Thank you for Jesus. We celebrate and pray these things in his name. Amen. Amen. Sirs, we